I'm Kirk Jowers, and welcome to the March 23rd episode of the COVID-19 series with Dr. Russell Osgathorpe, the Chief Medical Officer of doTERRA and a board-certified pediatric infectious diseases specialist. Starting this week, we are filming episodes on Mondays and Thursdays, and we'll release an FAQ episode tomorrow that we filmed today.
Great.
So, here is your COVID-19 update for March 23rd. The World Health Organization warned today that the coronavirus pandemic is accelerating. You've been warning us of this since we started on March 13, but to give you some numbers on that, it took 67 days from the first reported case to reach the first 100,000 cases, 11 days for the second 100,000, and just 4 days for the third 100,000. More than 750 million of India's more than 1.3 billion people are under lockdown as the second most populous country in the world tries to avoid an outbreak.
Yeah, that's remarkable, isn't it?
That is remarkable. New York has become the epicenter of the U.S. crisis.
Yep.
Nearly half of the over 40,000 confirmed infections in the U.S. are in New York.
Yep.
And with several countries announcing that they will not send athletes and many more countries asking for the 2020 Tokyo Olympic Games to be postponed, at the moment it appears very likely that the Olympic Games will be postponed. We have an IOC member who has said that it will be, but the official announcement has not been made at the time of this filming.
Correct.
Let's look at this graphic from the World Health Organization. As we do each day, there are now 332,935 confirmed cases, 14,510 deaths, and 189 countries with cases.
Rapidly evolving picture, as always.
Russ, I have two questions today, perhaps a little more involved, and that's why we're going to keep it a little more concise. First, is it true that ibuprofen may make COVID-19 worse?
No. The answer to that question is no. I would like to explain a little bit, though, if I can.
Please, yeah.
So there were some reports that have been circulated widely, both in academic circles and on social media, about non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen potentially making you more susceptible to the disease or giving you a worse outcome with the disease, COVID-19. That was based on an article published in The Lancet in March 11th that talked about angiotensin converting enzyme 2 being the receptor for the virus and that being upregulated in conditions like diabetes, hypertension, cardiac disease, and pulmonary disease, and also in patients who take long-term anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen. And it was postulated that that could be a potential risk factor for worse disease. Then subsequently in France, a health minister tweeted out, this is not how we do science by tweet, but they tweeted out that 3 patients did poorly in France on non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like ibuprofen. And that then spawned a whole bunch of discussion on social media and in academic circles. And since that time, both the World Health Organization and the CDC and scientists across the world have essentially debunked this. We don't feel that ibuprofen is linked to worse disease. There's no evidence at this time that is what we would call good or strong medical evidence to suggest any risk being increased with these kinds of drugs.
My second and final question today is, I've been reviewing a lot of articles about mental health and loneliness over the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
15...
As we've all kind of hunkered down.
As we've all hunkered down and we're doing what we're supposed to do and stay at home and all of these things. And yet I'm also reading that 1 day of true loneliness can be the equivalent of smoking 15 cigarettes, and we won't get into the medical science on that because that's not part of this show, but we know it's damaging to people. So with that in mind, I don't love the term social distancing anymore. Yeah. Is there a better term? What do you think about all of that?
I've read some of the same stuff, and I agree with you. I think that social distancing has been a term that we've used, and it's in all of our lexicons right now.
Right.
It's everywhere. But I believe that we are social animals. We need one another.
Right.
Human beings need social contact, and so I think a better, more descriptive term for what we need to slow the virus transmission is physical distancing.
Right.
We want to stay further apart from one another, but we don't want to disconnect from each other. We need to find different ways of connecting and supporting one another through difficult times. And that can be done. I've done it online with family members, over the phone with people that are in my sphere of influence, and it has been much more effective than I originally had thought.
Right.
Meetings at work are now happening more frequently online than they ever did before, and we can still be very productive and we can still laugh and socially communicate with one another. So to stop viral transmission, what we need is physical distance, not necessarily social separation.
Right.
We need to still connect with each other, but we just don't do it physically.
Right.
And we need to find other ways of connecting with one another to fill that need that is a real human need.
Right. And I would say, if we can all just think about whether it's our own parents or others who maybe don't have a family to be with, that don't have others in their home, people in the neighborhood,
Yeah.
that we need to figure out ways to call them or do something to make them feel loved and needed and have that human interaction.
Agreed.
Every day.
I found a fun little Twitter video that was in my feed of a young man who watched on the rooftop of a building a young woman a couple buildings away dancing, maybe making a TikTok video or something. And so he flew his drone over to her with his phone number, and then they actually corresponded afterwards through the phone.
Yeah.
So people can be creative in how they interact with one another and contact one another, lift one another, support one another. All these things are human things, and we can't lose that about ourselves. But we do need to distance ourselves from one another, or the curve will not flatten.
Thank you so much. Thank you for watching, and remain physically distant but socially
Connected.
connect. We'll see you next time.